Hey folks, it's the Poor Sports Seattle podcast. This is Casey McLean, and I am fresh off of, by the way, one of the coolest comedy weekends of my entire life. I got to open as of 2 days ago. I opened for Bert Kreischer, got to meet some other really cool comedians, Fortune Feemster, Jet Ski Johnson, at the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival in Spokane. Second year in a row I've done it, by the way. I hope they never book another comedian. I'm sure there's comedians out there that are mad that I'm the one doing it, not them. I hope that you never get a shot. It's so fun. It's last year I got to open for Tom Segura, and in front of 5,000 people. There was an estimate at a point that it would be more than that, and then there was this crazy weather situation we talked about on this podcast, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, 8,000 people. 8,000 people who either live in Spokane or who were visiting Spokane came out to watch me host for Bert Kreischer. By the way, hosting in comedy, very thankless job. Not something I do all that often anymore, but something that I always say, like, you should always do it. You should always host sometimes, because you never know, like an opportunity like this. I'll tell you this, these two shows that I've done, these two shows opening for these two huge comedians in this soccer arena in Spokane, are the two highest paying shows of my life. Like, it is valuable to be able to host. Probably helps you host a podcast, I guess, but I mean, valuable to be able to host comedy shows. Very, very fun time. I drove to Spokane. I had just a whirlwind. I was thinking about doing a podcast while I was in Spokane, and I just like an absolute whirlwind time. I left Tacoma at like 1:30, and by the time I went to sleep, it was 11 o'clock at night. I'd been awake since 5:30 in the morning, nonstop, working or driving or working or driving. And then busy Friday, I got to go golf with a buddy of mine. I'm going to tell you some stuff he told me, so I'm not going to tell you who it was, because I think those two things, too much information if I give you both. But really fun time leading up to it. Very busy weekend, and then to cap it off with just an 8,000. It's inconceivable to me, the idea that you have 8,000 fans. I have like 5,500 Instagram followers, and the idea of all of them showing up to one place at once to watch me do comedy, inconceivable. But this weekend in Seattle sports was not about me or my silly comedy. It was about Cal Raleigh. Cal Raleigh became the all-time leader in catcher home runs in a single season, and let's take a quick gander at some Cal Raleigh stats while I actually would like to, I'd like to put his, because whether he wins the MVP or not is, I don't think he's going to win the MVP. What are the betting odds on that right now, actually? AL MVP odds. According to the BetMGM, which I'm pulling up because they sponsor they're like the internet steward of the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook, which is the sportsbook that I use. So this might actually be, so Raleigh is plus 105. For AL MVP, this is actually wild. Tarek Skubals plus 15,000. Bobby Witt Jr. plus 15,000. Jose Ramirez plus 15,000. Vlad Jr. plus 25,000, Nick Kurtz plus 20,000, and Cal Raleigh plus 105, Aaron Judge minus 155. So the Vegas odds think that Aaron Judge is a significant favorite. I think he's going to win because, and I hate to be the guy that's like this whiny West Coast guy, I think it's East Coast bias. I think if they have the same quality season, East Coast bias will give Aaron Judge the nod. But all that being said, I don't care. I don't actually, that doesn't make Cal Raleigh not, and I've had this thought. I don't think we ever ended up doing this segment, right? Tell me if I'm wrong, but I've wondered a lot, how much would it cost to extend Cal Raleigh now? Like, if the Mariners had not extended him in the offseason and he was still a Boris client, well, if he's still a Boris client, you probably can't. But we're talking like position-altering money is what it would cost. Would it be $40 million a year? He probably wouldn't even be looking for an extension, but I guess a guy who plays catcher probably needs to be thinking of securing long-term wealth earlier than a guy like Aaron Judge, who's an athletic outfielder. But Cal Raleigh has 7.3 Fangraphs wins above replacement this year, tied with Aaron Judge. Again, if they end up even, I think that the nod will. My instinct, it's not because I think it should. I'll be angry about it also, but my instinct is that it's going to go to Judge. Even, by the way, like what Cal Raleigh's doing in T-Mobile Park, if you just go counting stats, the fact that he's doing it in a stadium that is significantly harder to hit in than Yankee Stadium, still obvious. I just think I think that's what's going to end up happening, is I think Aaron Judge is going to win the MVP. But I don't think it's, from a Mariners fan perspective, I don't think we have to. I'm going to pull up a list. This is the list of all-time. And if you're listening, I'm sorry, but this is the list of all-time Mariners seasons by wins above replacement on Fangraphs. And I'm going to read you. You're going to hear some familiar names. It's kind of crazy. Ken Griffey Jr., first, number one, 9.7 wins above replacement in 1996. Alex Rodriguez in 2000, 9.5 wins above replacement. Alex Rodriguez, 96, 9.2 wins. By the way, that 96 team having two players with 9+ wins on it. Now that we're here, because this is just offensive. I'll open a new tab with pitching because, let's see, real quick. 95, Randy Johnson was 95 in a strike-shortened season. Randy Johnson was worth 9.5 wins above replacement. What was he worth at 96? He hasn't shown up on this list yet, but I can just pull it up. I can just go to the Randy Johnson page just to end the madness on this. 96. Oh, he was injured for part of the year, so 1.6 wins above replacement. Anyways, to get down to the list, 97 Ken Griffey Jr., 93 Ken Griffey Jr., 98 Alex Rodriguez, then 2001 Brett Boone, 2003 Brett Boone. So you go like steroid-aided Brett Boone, very likely, if you believe the mounting or the mountain of evidence. Probably a steroid-aided Alex Rodriguez for at least one of those years, but maybe not in 1996, maybe not in 1998, I don't know. We think a clean Ken Griffey Jr., and then in ninth place, all-time Mariners single-season wins above replacement, Cal Raleigh. I was thinking about where does this season fit in the pantheon of Mariners seasons, in the very narrow but real history of this team, and it's up there with all of them. Chances are we're nearing the end of August. Chances are Cal Raleigh will end up with something close to like 8.5 wins above replacement. If he ends up with 8.5 wins above replacement, it's the fifth best season in Mariners history for a team that has never won a championship. This is a team that's got like several years of Ken Griffey Jr. and Alex Rodriguez to pull from, and he's going to be right up there with all those guys. And then I think you start to put him in the discussion of like, what does he have to do? Where does he rank among all-time Mariners right now? Where does he rank among all-time Mariners? If Cal Raleigh retired after the 2025 season, where would he rank among all-time Mariners? I'm going to take off the split seasons. We can. He's already the 8th leading Fangraphs WAR accumulator for the Mariners, ahead of Robinson Cano. By the way, in over 100 fewer games, ahead of Brett Boone, ahead of Julio Rodriguez. Yeah. A truly amazing season. And I think I said that. I don't even know if I said this. He broke the catcher home run record. just a truly amazing season in T-Mobile Park. And also, I think, like, not in a season where there's this, like, massive juiced ball conspiracy or anything like that. A dude that's just, like, out playing as good as you can play at the catcher position. Really impressive. You hope he can keep it healthy at some point. And let's talk about this real quick. These are the Fangraphs playoff odds. The Mariners, they had a little bit of a skid. The Astros also aren't playing incredibly well. The Mariners are 2 games behind the Astros. Fangraphs has the Mariners at an 8.5% chance to win the World Series. The Astros, who lead them by 2 games, at a 5.1 chance to win the World Series. So Fangraphs believes the Mariners are significantly better than the Astros. And doesn't believe, right? It's like an algorithm. It's not. But Fangraphs, according to Fangraphs, the Mariners are a significantly better team than the Astros, evidenced by the fact that despite the fact they're 2 games down, they have higher World Series odds. World Series odds is probably the closest thing to true talent we have at like the beginning of a season, a true talent estimate, a true talent algorithmic prognostication. But especially this far in, where they're 2 games back, and they're even not. I mean, the Astros have a 56.9% chance to win the division according to Fangraphs playoff odds. The Mariners still have a higher World Series percentage. So, at some point, at what point do you start to go like, should we be resting Cal Raleigh? Should Cal Raleigh start to get a couple more days off? I did see, by the way, that the unthinkable has happened a couple times recently, and one of it came with a home run. Mitch Garver at DH is an embarrassment. That is a roster failure. If Mitch Garver is your DH, a guy who barely hits well enough to be a backup catcher, is your DH. A guy who, we've all thought maybe at some point he would turn it around. He hasn't. Yes, he hit a home run the other day. By the way, also, for the folks that have wanted him gone, for the folks that have wanted Mitch Garver out and Harry Ford in, which I don't support that move. I think Mitch Garver and Harry Ford, I talked about it earlier in the year. The Fangraphs projections have them at like roughly about the same hitting value for the rest of the year. So I'm not someone who's out here trying to advocate for Mitch Garver to be released and Harry Ford to take his place, but Mitch Garver is like a middling backup catcher, which is surprising considering how bad he's been. But yeah, he's like a middling backup catcher. He never came to Seattle really to be the backup catcher, if you recall. He came here to be a DH and a guy that could hit lefties, and then has been not really good enough at either of those things. But the Mariners also got rid of their great Satan, the guy that's been on the chopping block for fans, that the fans have wanted gone for now a couple weeks. And I'll admit that I'm a little frustrated by it because it's August 24th. It was August 24th when they made the move, I believe. It's August 25th right now. And to cut Dylan Moore at this point when you had a chance to expand rosters and keep a guy on your roster, I know this is going to be unpopular, by the way. Dylan Moore has had just a generational downslide. I don't know what happened the second half of the season. I hope that we find out. I hope that we find out that Dylan Moore was dealing with something and that his career gets back on track, because he started the season really well. So well that, like I said last week, I was pushing for the Mariners to sign him to an extension. And thankfully they didn't. Thankfully I have no in with the Mariners to be able to influence any decisions. But I'm, especially when you know that the Victor Robles suspension is coming, and to me it felt like you can't find I don't know how the fake IL stuff works, but I mean, there's a lot of suspicion, or I've been suspicious many times over the years, that a lot of times these late season IL stints are just to kind of limp a guy to the roster expansion so you don't have to cut him. And why they couldn't do that with Dylan Moore, maybe it would require Dylan Moore playing ball a little bit and he didn't want to. Maybe he's frustrated with the organization. It sounds like he's getting an outright release and will not be reporting to Tacoma, and that's fine. I suspect there's not going to be a ton of interest in Dylan Moore in 2025, and his contract was up. So, happy trails in the PTI parlance. Happy trails to Dylan Moore, but also yeah. I don't think Donovan Solano is a worse hitter at this point. But like, how many first base DH only guys are you going to have on the roster that don't hit incredibly well? At least Dylan Moore provided some defensive versatility. That's not going to be as big of a problem in September when you have the expanded rosters, but I don't love it. I think it's one of those, I don't think it's like a massive margin. There was a great book written by a bad guy called The Extra 2% by Jonah Carey. Jonah Carey, I believe, is now in a Canadian prison? Is that right? Now let's double check this. I know that he was famously arrested for physically assaulting his wife, but is he in 2022? He was sentenced to 21 months in prison, more than prosecutors had requested. Carey must also serve 2 years, so it looks like he's got to be out of prison by now, right? If it's 21 months in 2022. But anyway, great book about the Rays where he talked about like the ways that they would try to like win at the margins every time. Just and iterate on that. And I do think that there's a chance that while it feels gratifying for fans who are frustrated by Dylan Moore to get rid of him, that the Mariners are going to lose something. Some versatility, something valuable that they would have gotten from Dylan Moore late in the season. And then I've been kind of trying to figure out, I have this idea for an off-season J.P. Crawford examination. Because J.P. Crawford has, this is what I have on screen right now, by the way, is J.P. Crawford since the All-Star break. J.P. Crawford since the All-Star break has hit 184 with a 244 on base and a 272 slugging, good for a 51 WRC plus. He was moved down in the order. There was a reaction to it, but I think with Dylan Moore on the roster, it's a little bit less noticeable how bad J.P. Crawford's been. And by the way, if there's other people covering this in the Seattle sports world, I have no idea. I'm not consuming a lot of Seattle sports media at this point, but I haven't heard anyone talk about it that I'm aware of. I haven't seen a bunch of tweets about it. J.P. Crawford's been terrible. Were it not for Dylan Moore, were it not for Donovan Solano, I think we'd be talking a lot more about how J.P. Crawford has absolutely plummeted the second half of the season. And he's the guy, by the way, who is going into the final year of his deal, and there was a lot of people in this offseason that wanted to see the Mariners cut J.P. Crawford. And I thought that seemed very stupid. I thought a bounce-back year was probable. I didn't think he was going to be... I did not think J.P. Crawford was going to be as good as he was in the first half for a whole season, nor did I think he'd do that for the first half. But I thought he'd be something around a league average hitter and a okay fielder, and he's been, he's a 111 WRC plus hitter at this point in the season, but that's down from like the mid 130s not very long ago, and he's been worth 2.2 wins above replacement while playing kind of like not incredible shortstop defense. And the question going into 2026, when we get to that point, is you got Colt Emerson on his heels, you got Cole Young on his heels, and J.P. Crawford will be in the final year of his deal. He has not been a very good shortstop for the last couple years defensively, and especially this year had stretches where he was like pretty bad. So worth -2 runs, but let's see what the position adjusted. Yeah, so negative, you can see here, outs above average, -8 outs above average. And what is that, fielding run value? Fielding run value is -6. Pretty bad. Where does that rank among shortstops? Let's see if we can get there very quickly. If you've never, by the way, this is like an old thing that I don't spend enough time doing anymore, but it's just like navigating the Fangraphs leaderboards can be can be quite fun. Do you ever miss having free time? What a life that was, huh? Yeah. So shortstop's fielding run value, he's the second worst shortstop in baseball. And by outs above average, he is the second worst, tied for the second worst shortstop in baseball. Not a surprise. He's had a rough year defensively. Range probably being the biggest factor. You get with a guy like J.P. Crawford, if you move him off a shortstop and put him at third base, does the bat actually play at third base is a question that I have. If you move him to second base, does it actually hurt you? Like, is 2026 Cole Young a better hitter than 2026 J.P. Crawford? I think there's like a really strong chance the answer to that's yes. But can you put J.P. Crawford into like a kind of super sub? I know that the hipster guy many years ago was Ben Zobrist, but could you put him in a role like that? Does he have enough sprint speed? I want to say his sprint speed's like towards the lower end of the middle at this point in his career. Does he have enough to play a corner outfield position? Does he have enough to be? Could he play all? Could he be 2026's Dylan Moore outside of the fact that he's? Or are the Mariners going to be stubborn like they were a couple years ago, at least publicly, rhetorically, that he's their shortstop? If you have a 100 WRC plus J.P. Crawford in 2026, it's a lot less damaging if he's doing it in left field, right field, and playing 3 infield positions. By the way, feel free to comment. I put almost every comment on the screen, so unless you use a slur, you're pretty much guaranteed to go on the screen. Happy to answer any questions. Happy to hear any criticisms, read any criticisms. Yeah, I don't know if J.P. Crawford's going to have a ton of trade value. I guess that's the other potential option, is that if there's a market for J.P. Crawford, trading him, I don't think you're going to probably come bring Colt Emerson up like day one next year. That's my suspicion. But yeah, I think you start to head down that road of what does the future look like for J.P. Crawford in Seattle, and if it's not as a starting shortstop, like start to figure out other options. Get the guy some reps. Get him some reps out in the outfield. Lastly, let me make sure I didn't forget anything. I think that's so J.P. Crawford having a sneakily Dylan Moore-like 51 WRC plus since the All-Star break is disappointing. I want to talk about Jalen Milroe. While I have a moment, I'm going to pull up Jalen Milroe's preseason stats. I was, on Saturday, that was the day I opened for, have I mentioned that I opened for Bert Kreischer? Have I brought that up yet? I don't know if I have. That was the day that the Seahawks ended. It was their final preseason game against the Packers. And Jalen Milroe played I think he played the entire, did he play every, was there any other, I know they said that he was going to play the entire game. I don't think they have that many guys. I don't think they have a fourth quarterback on the roster. Yeah, so he took all the snaps at quarterback, which is great, by the way. That's awesome. It's also pretty cool as a Seahawks fan to have intrigue during the preseason, to be like, who's this guy? And I've also started to see this sentiment that I find very funny, which is the idea I've seen people go like, well, a third round pick won the starting job many years ago. Why not Jalen Milroe? And it's like, the idea, Russell Wilson was such a polished passer in comparison to Jalen Milroe at this point. Also, the reason Russell Wilson had a chance to win that job is because Matt Flynn got injured and didn't play incredibly well in the preseason. And also, I think he was not making the kind of money, even like timeline adjusted, that Sam Darnold is. And I guess the other thing is there wasn't a viable backup either. Russell Wilson was either going to probably be the second string quarterback or the starter. And it shocked the world, by the way. And I was against it. I will be on record right now because I believe in accountability and I believe in revisiting your priors and all that stuff. I was against it. I was wrong. Russell Wilson played very well for basically his entire Seahawks career. He played very well. But I was against it. I don't think it would have changed anything for the positive. You know, we don't live in a vacuum. It's possible a lot of things could have been different if he didn't start and sat for one season. Probably not for the good, though, because the outcome was pretty damn good. That's not Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe, I will say there's some probability that the Seahawks are playing like a milquetoast version of their offense and that they're not showing everything, but Jalen Milroe's been pretty, just boring, right? Watching Jalen Milroe has been just kind of boring this offseason. And I kind of applaud that because the things that he needs to work on are the things that he's being asked to work on. The things that you need him to get better at are what he's getting better at or what they're trying to get him to be better at. Yeah, he ran the ball 7 times on Saturday, 13 of 24 for 148 yards. I might or might not have slept for chunks of the game. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, just because there's this thing like the idea that there's something special or magical about the 3rd round pick in the Seahawks. If the Seahawks had drafted Russell Wilson in the 1st round, that would have been a good pick, right? Like the Jalen Milroe is not the polished passer that Russell Wilson was. Because you heard that the whole time. All you heard was like Russell Wilson is, if he was 6'2", he'd be the number 1 overall pick. And that's just, it simply is not what happened. Okay. Dan Viens, my buddy Dan Viens, did a very good job going through the roster and talking about kind of where the crunches are and where he expects there to be some cuts. I'm a little intrigued by the idea that Marquez Valdes-Scantling maybe doesn't make the roster after signing not a super long, super heavily guaranteed contract, but like a real contract. I'd be surprised by that. But also, Torrey Horton's been very good. I think, so yeah, Jake Bobo got a concussion in that game. It'll be curious to see. Curious that he was playing in the game on Sunday because it seemed like the guys that were playing largely on Sunday were not roster guarantees. Like outside of Jalen Milroe, you get no carries from Zach Charbonnet or Kenneth Walker or George Halani. You see kind of a disappointing output from Damian Martinez. Jacardia Wright has a good game. Like it seemed like a bunch of dudes fighting for the last roster spot, which is, I mean, that's kind of the last game of everybody's, but it was maybe more pronounced. Like everybody that was playing is like maybe at risk of losing their job. And if the Seahawks end up cutting Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I really hope that it would be because one of the guys that they drafted, either Torrey Horton or Ricky White, is going to make the roster. And I mean, Horton's going to make the roster regardless, but like, and it's going to contribute. Yeah. It's a short podcast. Wow, 30 minutes. It feels longer than that. Jared Ivey, I will say, I think Jared Ivey might make the roster, and Jared Ivey's not going to be someone that's exciting to a lot of people. Even if, by the way, the Seahawks had drafted him in the 2nd or 3rd round, I don't think it would have been particularly exciting, but he ends up going undrafted. The Seahawks sign him. He's kind of like a tweener. He was listed in like the 280s when he played in college, and then came in the 260s, but ran like he weighed in the 280s, and has been productive. All the reports from camp are that he's very good in training camp, and in games he's been productive. And I would have been stoked if I don't know if I said this just now, but I have said I would have been happy if the Seahawks drafted Jared Ivey with like a third or fourth round pick. I like Elijah Arroyo. I like Nick Immanwori. I like huge chunks of this draft. But outside of the first round, if they drafted Jared Ivey, I'd have been on board. So I'm happy that he's playing well and looks like he's pretty likely to make the roster. I think that's it. Come see me, by the way. I will be at Tacoma Comedy Club on Saturday. Is that right? Saturday or Sunday? Come on, let's get it. Oh my God. I'm going to quickly get a calendar up here. Tried to go quickly, so it's on Sunday. Opening for Gabriel Rutledge, my good friend, best comedian in the Pacific Northwest, Gabe Rutledge, opening for his special taping at Tacoma Comedy Club. So come check that out. Also, hit me up if you're interested in free tickets. I don't know if he's going to need free tickets. I don't know if they're going to need to fill it out at all, but if they do, send me a message for some free tickets, and I'll see what I can do. All right. Thank you, guys. I'm going to go pick up my children, and I will talk to you later. Oh, by the way, I was going to say, we are at the end of a brutal stretch for podcasts. I was like on the verge of quitting this podcast, and I'm excited that football season is back. Do I make it to next football season? I don't know, but I think I will be rejuvenated by the fact that we actually have some football to talk about instead of just digging for Mariners stories every week. All right, thanks all.